Nitai Gora Vishwadaparam Hamsa Parvajikacharya Asatarashasana Srimati His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Vishwadaparam Hamsa Parvajikacharya Asatarashasana Srimati His Divine Grace Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Samavakta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai All glories to Sangha.
Hare Krishna. Hare
All
Krishna.
glories to Sangha.
Hare
All
Krishna.
glories to Shri Guru. I'm sorry, I forgot my notes in the jacket. Unfortunately, I'm not learned, and this knowledge is new, so I have to have notes. So, welcome to Shrimadbhagavatam class, ISKCON Detroit, every morning, Bhagavatam class here. So thank you for joining, and thank you for giving this opportunity to say a few words about this glorious, glorious book. And so painstakingly Srila Prabhupada has brought to us. So we are reading from Canto 1, Chapter 5, Text 4. So before we start, let's say a small prayer. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Narayan Namaskritya.
Narayan Namaskritya.
Naram Cheva Narottamam.
Naram Cheva Narottamam.
Devim Saraswatim Vyasam.
Devim Saraswatim Vyasam.
Tato Jaya Mudirye.
Tato Jaya Mudire.
Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu.
Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu.
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya.
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya.
Bhagavati Uttama Shloke.
Bhagavate Uttama Shloke.
Bhaktir Bhavati Nishtaki.
Bhakti Bhakti Nastiki.
So, Canto 1, Chapter 5, Narad's Instructions on Shrimad Bhagavatam, text number 4. Jignasitam aditam cha.
Jigyasitam aditam cha.
Brahmaya tata santana.
Brahmaya tata sanatana.
Tatapi sochas yatmanam.
Tatapi suchasyatmanam.
Akritartha iva prabho.
Akritartha iva prabhu.
Jignasitam aditam cha.
Jigyasitam aditam cha.
Brahmaya tat sanatanam.
Brahmaya tat sanatanam.
Tatapi sochasya manam.
Tatapi suchasyatmanam.
Akritartha iva prabho.
Akritartha iva prabhu.
Jignasitam aditam cha.
Jigyasitam aditam cha.
Brahmaya tat sanatanam.
Brahmaya tat sanatanam.
Tatapi sochasya yatmanam.
Tatapi suchasyatmanam.
Akritartha iva prabho.
Akritartha iva prabhu.
Anyone would like to try?
Jigyasitam aditam cha.
Jignasitam aditam cha.
Brahmaya tat sanatanam.
Brahmaya tat sanatanam.
Tatapi suchasyatmanam.
Tatapi sochasyatmanam.
Kritartha iva prabhu.
Akritartha iva prabho.
Jijanasitam adhitanam cha.
Jignasitam aditam cha.
Brahma Yatat
Sanatanam
Tat Hi Sarchasat Atmanam
Tatapi Sochasyatmanam
Akritarta Iva Prabhu
Agrit Artha Iva Prabhu. Word for word. Jignasitam. Deliberated fully well.
Deliberated fully well.
Aditam. The knowledge obtained. Cha. And. Brahma. The absolute. Yat. What. That. Sanatanam. Eternal. Tatapi. In spite of that. Sochasi. Lamenting. Atmanam. Unto the self. Akrita Artha. Undone. Eva. Like. Prabhu. My dear son. My dear sir. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation. You have fully delineated the subjects of impersonal Brahman as well as the knowledge derived therefrom. Why should you be despondent in spite of all this, thinking that you are undone, my dear Prabhu? Please repeat. You have fully delineated the subject of impersonal Brahman as well as the knowledge derived therefrom. Why should you be despondent in spite of all of this, thinking that you are undone, my dear Prabhu? Purport. The Vedanta Sutra, or Brahma Sutra, compiled by Sri Vyasadeva, is the full deliberation of the impersonal absolute feature, and it is accepted as the most exalted philosophical exposition in the world. It covers the subject of eternity, and the methods are scholarly. So there cannot be any doubt about the transcendental scholarship of Vyasadeva. So why should he lament? Jai. Om Ajnanatirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yukta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavanscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanustute Devi Parnamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Durubhyasya Kripa Sindhu Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashata Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Krishna. So, reading the translation one more time. You have fully delineated the subject of impersonal Brahman, as well as the knowledge derived therefrom. Why should you be despondent in spite of all of this, thinking you are undone, my dear Prabhu? So, Srila Prabhupada has actually lectured on this particular verse very wonderfully in 1968, so I was just going to kind of reiterate his words from that particular lecture. The question of Narad to Vyasadeva, his disciple, is that, my dear disciple Vyasadeva, you have thoroughly inquired. We see all throughout Bhagavatam so far, starting with the end part of chapter 4, we discussed yesterday, and he's asking his spiritual master, I'm unsatisfied, I'm not happy, and so forth. And so Narada is acknowledging that, yes, you have asked me, thoroughly inquired. Jignasya aditam, which is in the first line of this particular text. Adityam means to have studied thoroughly. So he has studied this, he has written it down, he has understood it and put it into writing for us, this Vedanta Sutra. And something about it is still not fulfilling. And what about it? It says Brahma, right? In the line over here, Brahma yat tat sanatana. So Brahma means absolute truth. Okay? So Jigsa Titam Aditam Cha Brahma, and the absolute truth, yat tat Brahma Sanatana. And Sanatanam means eternal. Okay, so you have the absolute truth, eternal. So the conception of Brahman, the absolute truth, is eternal. Okay? Brahman, the definition of Brahman is that which is great, the greatest. So just like we say God is great, you've all heard, God is great and stuff. So the greatest, this Brahman, the greatest, and also it is increasing. So Brahman is not limited. It's not, we may be limited, right? But Brahman is not limited. So just like we have the sky, right, as an example, the sky can be the greatest, but it is also increasing according to astronomical calculations. The planets, the universe, they can increase, and so forth. So the absolute truth, that is also eternally increasing as well. So, but there's no comparison. The Brahman, its increasement and its grandeur and magnitude. So, Brahma's magnitude, you cannot, it's eternal, it's ever increasing, so you cannot compare it to the sky. The sky is still limited, but we think it's great, right? Because to see the end of the sky is difficult. So for the spiritual realization, this is very important. Jigyasa, right? It means inquiry. And today's main topic is going to be about inquiry. Srila Prabhupada has stressed the importance of inquiry within this particular lecture. So one who's not inquisitive, for him there's no progress, either spiritually or materially, right? So like in school, right, the boy who is inquiring from the teacher, right, asking questions and all of that, he's considered actually to be very intelligent. Similarly, like in household life, right, like the children, they sometimes inquire from their parents. So, Father, what is this? Father, what is that? A boy or girl a child is considered very intelligent if they're able to inquire, right? To hear something and to inquire about it. This is something that we've all experienced, right? Like being in school and stuff. So for spiritual life, one should be also very seriously inquisitive and studious, right? Because all of this knowledge, it's great science, right? You hear the science of Bhakti Yoga. This is all a very great science, spiritual science. And one has to study this science from a bona fide spiritual master, right? In order for us to understand this science in a proper way, we have to learn from a spiritual master, a bona fide spiritual master. And study means, it does not mean that one has to be highly educated in academic education, right? This type of study, spiritual study, it's not dependent on one's academic education, right? You can be book smart, but this is different, right? So you'll be surprised, so that is the importance of having that spiritual master, having that correct source to help you understand and help you study the spiritual science. In Srila Prabhupada's time, he had mentioned that his grand spiritual master, so we're talking about in the disciplic succession, Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj, right? So his spiritual master's spiritual master. He was actually illiterate and so forth. And his Srila Prabhupada's spiritual master, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he was actually very learned. If you ever read any of his translations of the books, even like to read the translation of Brahma Samhita, the English part of it, it's written in such high English. It's like almost you need an interpretation of that and stuff. But he was very, very intelligent, very learned, for that age and that scholar. So how does he, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, become the disciple of an illiterate man, right? He was illiterate, Gaur Kishore Das Babaji, but when you asked him some spiritual question, right, or something of spiritual significance, he will answer you immediately and very nicely. This is realization. This is spiritual realization. So now, how does this realization take place? Right? You don't have to be book smart, but the spiritual realization has to take place. So, again, not by academic education, it is through sincerity. That is how we get realization, the spiritual realization. If one is very sincere and he wants to know what is the spiritual science, what is God, what is the self, what is the super self, right? The super soul. What is this world? And what is the spiritual world? So there are many, many questions. It can actually go on. But unfortunately, in this day and age, we see people are not so inquisitive about the spiritual science. And one who is not inquisitive, right? For them, there's no need to accept a spiritual master. When you have these types of questions can only be answered through a spiritual master, through the disciplic succession, and through someone who has realized the absolute truth, who has realized this truth, right? They're the ones who can be able to answer this. So in Shrimadbhagavatam, it is directed, Tasmat Gurum Prapadyate, this comes in the 11th canto. One should surrender to a spiritual master. And who will surrender? Who will become very inquisitive about what is God? So this is what, as a human being, we have to seek out. So for example, what is God? Who am I? Now, unless someone is very seriously inquisitive about the subject matter, again, there's no need for a spiritual master. So we must develop this inquisitiveness. We don't take things blindly, we ask questions. When you hear things, you ask the question. And who you ask from is equally important, thus the spiritual master. there must be, and we see this happening in life too, like in the marketplace when you go, a businessman may ask, what's the price of this? Because what's the cost of this? He's interested in purchasing and selling things, right? That's his business. So, but Bhagavatam says, like, not this type of inquisitiveness, right? The material inquiry is not important. There's actually no need to ask about material things because it's not required. Jignasu Shreya, what is my ultimate goal of life? This is the question, right? So if someone asks you, what's your ultimate goal of life? What would you answer? Right? That is the inquiry. That is the inquiry. So nowadays, everyone thinks that the ultimate goal of life is maybe to accumulate a lot of wealth, or maybe to have a big home and many cars, and that's my ultimate goal of life, right? So these are the situation in the current day. And as Kali Yuga progresses, we know this question, what is the ultimate goal of life, is not only not going to be sometimes even asked or contemplated, but it's also to get the correct answer, right? But Shrimadbhagavatam says that you do not require to inquire about big houses or how to get a car and all this stuff, because whether you inquire or not inquire, you're destined to achieve those things, right? Our material life is already destined based on our previous actions, our previous work, right? What we've done in our past lives, the karma we have developed and accumulated, is going to be destined, or going to show up in this particular life. Depending on what you did in your past life, you might be rich or poor. Depending on what you did in your last life, you might be diseased or non-diseased. What you did in your past life, you might, so all of this stuff, these material things that are going to affect us, comes through our previous actions. So what is the purpose? So for what purpose should one work, right? If we're, everyone is bound by these reactions of our past work, so for what purpose do I work? So the goal of life, that goal of life is to search out who is God, right? Search out God and my relationship to God. Because we are part and parcel of God. And somehow we're entrapped in this material world, right? We wanted to joy, separately from Krishna. Now, being entrapped in this material world, it's full of misery. Ashashvatam comes in Bhagavad Gita. I can't remember the verse right now, but in this world, in this material world, no one can be really happy. And why? Because it's full of anxiety, right? Vaikunta is free from anxiety. Vaikunta means free from anxiety, and this world is full of anxiety. And that is our condition. Even sitting here in the temple room, right? Or sometimes we are doing something and we are always thinking, what's going to happen tomorrow? What about my family? What about this? What about that? Something is always like noodling on something, right? So there's always some type of anxiety over here. We're not fully free. Even from a health perspective, from so many different things can affect our level of anxiety. And so as long as we got this anxiety, there's actually no question of happiness, because Vaikunta, right, the spiritual world, is free from all anxieties. And in this world, we experience three types. There are threefold miseries that are called. There's three types of miseries. One is misery of the mind and the body. Things are always, we don't even know what's happening in our body, but things can be happening in our body that causes misery, right? This pain, that pain, who knows what's developing. So same thing with the mind. The mind can be also very tricky, right? It could be your best friend or it could be your enemy, but at the same time, there's so much stuff going on, so that causes misery in the mind. Then there's miseries pertaining to other people, right? People who we've got connection with. So somehow or another, people that we know, sometimes they cause us misery, right? Or anxiety or, issues or something, whether good or bad. Like sometimes because of our connection to people, we're not alone in a cave and stuff. It can cause us misery. She said that about me, and he said that about... All kinds of things can happen. And then there's misery of natural disasters. Mother Earth does show her face, right? The more things we do in order to disturb her, she will also be showing her face as well too. So there's all kinds of natural disasters that are occurring all over the world, and thousands of people are affected by that at all times. So if somebody is actually satisfied and they say they're happy, Srila Prabhupada says he's cheating himself, because this world does not contain the happiness that can be found. Bhagavad Gita says, Sukham Atyantika Yat in 6.21. If you want supreme happiness, then you have to search it out beyond the sense happiness, right? Our senses also, they're always constantly searching for happiness. Our eyes are searching for happiness, nice smells, nice taste, nice things to hear, nice things to touch, right? We're always sensing that out as well too. But we have to go beyond our senses. We have to go to what is transcendental. So you should be inquisitive about the goal of life. Where can I get this uninterrupted, eternal, and blissful happiness? That is what we have to search out. Where do I find this? And that is the direction that is given to us through Shrimadbhagavatam. Right? So if I'm searching for that kind of happiness, which cannot be achieved by traveling somewhere, or, if I even go to different places around the world or in space or whatnot, then one may ask the question, if I am engaging in the search, if I'm searching out this goal of life, and accepting that the spiritual realization is the goal of my life, then what about my living conditions? Because I'm still a living entity, and I'm searching for the spiritual realization. But what to consider of my situation now? Like, we are living entities, human beings, right? So we have to work. We are in this material world. We are going to have to, do some material work and so forth. So Bhagavatam answers, you can be engaged in whatever engagement God has given you. Whatever material work, whatever your situation is here and stuff, but do it honestly, right? And then, but gain out your engagement, or the gain from your engagement, whatever work you're going to be doing in this world, right, will come to you automatically and stuff. But you should be very much anxious to actually realize yourself. If there's any anxiety we should have, is to understand who we really are and stuff. Because work will go on in this material life, right? We will constantly be doing our things that we need to do in this material life. But the anxiety I should have, not for the material engagement, but it should be for understanding who I really am from a spiritual perspective. The example that Srila Prabhupada gives is like a firefighter. So nobody expects that there may be fire in your house or in your apartment, but sometimes it can happen. And so the fire department is called. Similarly, if we don't expect fires, but it happens, so similarly, no need to try for material happiness. Whatever is ordained, it will come, right? Whatever I'm destined to achieve, it will come. So no need to work over hard for it. Therefore, we should not try to waste also our valuable time, because this time, this human life, is very valuable. In this human life, we have the ability to inquire. Do dogs inquire? Do trees inquire? They're all living entities. But in this lifetime, Krishna has given us the ability to inquire. So we should not waste this valuable time in inquiring about material things, inquiring about so many other things, or endeavoring hard for certain material happiness and so forth. We should use this time, right, very wisely. And in Bhagavatam it says, the first inquiry is Atato Brahma Jigyasa. So Narada is instructing Vyasadeva that you've already inquired about Brahman, right? You've written about, and you've fully studied this Brahman, this absolute truth. And absolute truth in the beginning is impersonal. So just like the sun, right? The sun, you know, when we first experience the sun, it is the sunshine that we're experiencing, right? How do we know the sun is there? We feel the sunshine. We see the sunshine. We see the light. So every one of us has got to experience how sunshine is overcast all over the universe, right? There's light that the sun emits all over the universe. It comes also within our rooms. It also, we can go outside and we can see the sunshine. So like this, there's also night, right? Where there is no sunshine and it's darkness. But in the morning, as soon as the sunshine comes, similarly, in certain stages in our life, we may understand what is Brahman. And Brahman is considered the light, right? To develop this understanding, this developing the spiritual science. And darkness is the ability to not see things correctly or as they are, right? This is the comparison that is used. So light is to see things as they are, as they truly are. Who are you? Who is God? What is my relationship with God? And the darkness is to not see these things correctly or rightly. So we sing Oma Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakya, right? We even in our Guru Vandana, when we're reciting or singing the prayers, we see that the spiritual master opens my darkened eyes with spiritual light, right? So this is what is being discussed here. So darkness means that we don't understand things as they are, but the sunshine, the light, we begin to understand everything that is coming to us. So similarly, Brahman, being in the light, and when we realize this Brahman, you can start to see these things and take yourself out of this darkness. Now Vyasadeva says that he's seen the light, right? He's written about Brahman, but he's not happy. So wait a minute. How can you start realizing things and not be happy? So this means that even one who realizes Brahman, but has not ultimately realized the ultimate end of Brahman, still there's no happiness, right? Because even Brahman, although it's eternal, and you see the sunlight and so forth, but you haven't visited the sun planet yet. So if we take the sunshine, right? Where is the source of the sunshine? It is the sun planet. When we go to the sun planet, say that our bodies allow us to go to the sun planet, right? We get more extensive knowledge. We get more, right? Understanding of who the sun is and stuff. But not only going to the sun planet, but say we meet the presiding president of the sun planet or the presiding deity of the sun planet, then we really understand. We start to get more realization and understanding. So this first level of understanding is the Brahman. The second understanding is to know him by meditation within the heart. So we've talked about this a little bit previously. There's the Brahman, and then there's the Paramatma, which is the realization within the heart. So through meditation, these people who meditate and so forth, or through our meditation, we may be able to see the super soul within ourselves, within himself. So this is the next level of understanding, to see that I am spirit soul and that the Supreme Spirit is within me as well, right? The two birds on the tree that we've talked about. So now, unless we can see that the super soul is within myself, right? This meditation is not perfect. You know, there's super soul residing in you. There's the supreme soul residing in you, and you, right? We have to start seeing that the supreme soul is residing in all living entities and stuff. Otherwise, where is our meditation leading us? So, yogis tried to do this. And what do the devotees do? The devotees, they want to go directly to see the deity on the planet, right? They want to go see Krishna. They want to know who Krishna is. They want to have that personal relationship and associate with him. That is the position of a deity. So you have the jnanis, the yogis, and you have the devotees, and the different levels of their realization. From the Brahman to the Paramatma to Bhagavan realization. So, and those who come into this light, they can start experiencing these different things as they continue their meditation, as they continue their inquiry, as they continue to learn from a spiritual master. So one can understand Krishna, if one can understand Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, right? Then everything becomes automatically known to him. So we can try to understand the room full of the Vedas and this, you know, Brahman and all the intricacies of the absolute truth and so forth. But we can also try to go and understand who Krishna is. And by understanding who Krishna is, we will understand all these various other aspects. Okay? So indirectly or directly, which is easier, directly. So Narada is now, this Narada Muni, he, through the dislokic succession, right, he is to be expected to know who Krishna is. And therefore Vyasadeva is asking him, he's inquiring from him, because he knows who Krishna is. So you can, because you know, I can, you know, understand from him what my defect is. So as Vyasadeva can understand what his defect is, and understand truly what is going to make him happy, right? Because he has touched some level, but he hasn't gone to the highest, the greatest level and stuff. So this is Srila Prabhupada's tried to explain according to what Srila Prabhupada said in his lecture. So this is what I had for today. So thank you so much for being here and listening. And if there's any inquiries or questions about today, please feel free to ask at this time. So thank you. Hare Krishna. Any questions?
I do have a question, Maki. It's not about the lesson, but thank you for the lesson.
Yes.
I find the Sanskrit to be very distracting. Why is it so important to read the Sanskrit if no one, I mean, if no one speaks it, if no one, you know, what's the importance of saying it in Sanskrit?
So, from my understanding, the importance, first of all, this text and the language used to be Sanskrit. So just like we speak English, previously Sanskrit was spoken. It was the spoken language. And it's also Srila Prabhupada, right, to maintain the authenticity of these books, right? This original text is written in Sanskrit. So he gives you the Sanskrit so that you can see that he is saying as it is, and it's not some made-up thing that he has done, right?
Okay.
So to show, you know, this is how it was written. Here's the word, like the alliteration, the word for word. So he gives us this so that we can understand what the true, actual, as it is, was given to us, right, through Vyasadeva, and then, you know, passed on written down. But then, for our purposes, because yes, we don't speak Sanskrit, we don't fully understand Sanskrit, and so then he gives us his translation of purports. But it's important because if someone questions it, where'd you get this knowledge from? How do you know this is the translation? How do you know? You know, someone can question the other way. Then you can say, this is the original text from the
Right. Okay.
Shrimadbhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, whatever it is, right? Even Chaitanya Charitamrita. He gives us the original and then gives us the word-for-word translation. So we can't, someone might say, oh, how do you know Atma means soul, right? Like, how do you know, right? But we know through the translation that Srila Prabhupada has done.
Okay.
So it is important to, if anyone questions, right, we have the original and then we have the English version.
Okay.
But if we just have English, right, someone would be like,
Then we have no proof of...
no proof.
Okay.
Exactly.
That makes sense.
Exactly.
All right, thank
the
you.
proof won't be there. Yeah, no problem. And I mean, yes, I myself have a very difficult time with Sanskrit, but as we keep practicing, like some of these words are now like, I know what they mean and I know how to recite them and stuff like that. Many words I don't know and so forth, but as we continue the study, we will learn. You know, I know even some Matajis, they study the Sanskrit and try to memorize the shlokas. Now, in the reverse end, just memorizing shlokas and not understanding what they mean is also not correct, right? Because you should understand what you're saying. If I'm able to rattle off the entire Bhagavad Gita as it is in Sanskrit, but I can't tell you the purpose of the Bhagavad Gita or what it means, what's the point, right? So, again, both are important, you know, understanding the translation and the purport, but then also trying to learn the Sanskrit as well, too. So both are important. And so,
Okay. Thank you so much.
yeah,
Hare
no
Krishna.
problem. Hare Krishna. Good inquiry. That was important. So,
It's been bothering me for a while. I knew there had to be some kind of reason, because why would you go to so much trouble to, you know, 3 different
Also,
translations?
vibrations are there.
Beg pardon?
yes.
Sanskrit language, when you utter, right, it creates certain vibration.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh,
Which
that's
is beneficial. Like you say the first shloka of Shrimadbhagavatam, right? Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So these invocations, these are done in Sanskrit only, because this vibration will create something in you that will help you in order to receive the knowledge and all these things. So these are things, it won't come in the English language.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you just talk in English language, it won't come.
Yeah.
Wow.
The vibrations will help you.
Yeah.
Wow,
It's
that's
like
pretty...
trying to make everything use into a spiritual process.
Yeah.
That's
No, it's
the-
very spiritual, these words.
Yeah.
And also, like, you know, those who know how to recite Sanskrit, you know, properly with the proper mood and the proper spiritual background, like the empowerment that comes from these shlokas it's transcendental and stuff. So when a pure Brahmana says these shlokas, right, through the proper understanding, it's extremely powerful. And if we listen to Srila Prabhupada's lectures, he's always referring back to the Sanskrit words.
Yeah.
Because he wanted us to also be well studied, right? And to understand, because if anyone comes and says and argues, you know, a certain point, which, you know, in this day and age, everyone's just like, you know, prove that, or how do you know, or this, you know, always like, someone can be very argumentative. And even if they've studied the Vedas, they can be also like, hey, I know the Vedas, you know? We see that a lot in Chaitanya Charitamrita. So where's the reference? How do you prove it, right? So Srila Prabhupada also helps us teach all of that and stuff. Those of you who take Bhakti Shastri, right, you have to memorize certain verses. That is to help you, right? When you have to explain this Krishna conscious process, and if you know the verses that prove those certain points, right? That's the original text, the original shloka. This is what Krishna has spoken, right? It is in Sanskrit, but Bhagavad Gita is a conversation of Arjuna and Krishna, and these are Krishna's words,
Right.
right? So it's very powerful.
It's the only spoken language that lacks any ambiguity. Means words mean exactly
Well, you know,
what you say.
for
Not like
several
English.
hundred years, it was the international trade language. The whole country, the whole world, the trading world spoke Sanskrit.
Really?
At one point, yeah. Sanskrit. When India was in charge of itself, when it was taking up 70% of the world economy, it was the international trade language. Sanskrit was.
Wow.
And when Great Britain came in, when Great Britain left, India was 3% of the world economy. From 70% of the world economy to 3% under British rule. That's how bad Great Britain screwed India. Wow. Out of a world economy, a world network.
Yeah.
And the kings and queens single-handedly ruined it.
Krishna.
Yeah.
I think as a personal point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, it's Grantaraj Shrimadbhagavatam ki jai, Prabhupada ki jai, motivation.